السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. كتابات أندري فيلتشيك نادرة، وصفها المتابعون لا سيما نعوم تشومسكي بالسلاح الذي لا غنى عنه في ترسانة أي شخص يقاتل من أجل السلام والعدالة الاجتماعية، مع الكاتب الأممي أندري فيلتشيك ونظرته الثاقبة التي اخترقت الأسطح إلى الواقع من الداخل. معكم زينب صفار، تابعونا. الغرب يصنع الأكاذيب الوحشية ثم يقول لنا إننا ينبغي أن نكون موضوعيين. هي كلمات المفكر الروسي أندري فيلتشيك. فلعدة قرون كما يرى المراقبون كان مواطنو فرنسا والمملكة المتحدة وبلجيكا وإسبانيا والبرتغال وغيرها من الدول الغربية يحدقون مجدوهين بالسفن الحربية المغادرة لشواطئهم والمبحرة نحو آسيا وأمريكا اللاتينية وأفريقيا. كانوا يتظاهرون بأنهم حقا لا يعرفون الأهوال التي ستنشرها هذه السفن حول العالم. وعندما عادت تلك السفن محملة بالعبيد والغنائم التي لا يمكن أن يتصوروها، أوصدوا عقولهم وادعوا الجهل مرة أخرى ونسبوا ازدهار مدنهم للبراعة الغربية وروح المغامرة والعمل الجاد، ولكن بالتأكيد ليس للإرهاب والاغتصاب والنهب المروع لثروات العالم. فيلتشيك الروائي والصحفي الجوال حول العالم يشرح لنا أكثر كيف علينا مواجهة ومحاربة البروبغندا الغربية التي تشيطن الإسلام والأنظمة التقدمية اليوم، ولا سيما أن الغرب يمتلك أجهزة دعائية فعالة ومؤثرة بشكل كبير، كما ويحدثنا عن نقده لكتاب جون بيركنز اعترافات قاتل اقتصادي مأجور، وهو كتاب فيه وصف دقيق ومفصل لكيفية عمل الغرب في زعزعة البلدان الفقيرة، وذلك باستخدام الفساد والمال والكحول والجنس. Russian-American philosopher Andrei Velchik, novelist, filmmaker, playwright, and a journalist who has been to various conflicts and zones across the globe. Welcome again to The Inside, sir.
Thank you so much, Ms. Zeynet.
You're most welcome, sir. Well, one of your essays was titled as How to Fight Western Propaganda. This is a very attractive title, and you said first the West manufactures monstrous lies, and then they tell us that we should be objective. Can you illustrate, please, more?
First of all, if you talk to the population in North America, but also in Europe, we have to admit that the propaganda, Western propaganda, was extremely successful. It may come to your viewers as a shock, but after living in all parts of the world, I think that the most indoctrinated part of the world is actually Europe, followed very closely by North America. The reason is that they actually do not question anymore official narrative that is being fed to them, either because they are indifferent or because the narrative is so overwhelming and it's so actually positive towards them. You know, the Europe is and the Western world are suffering from the complex of superiority, not of inferiority,
white supremacy,
of superiority, of white supremacy. And many other things. The other day I was actually debating also Christianity with my good friend who is 91 years old, and he's considered one of two greatest Christian theologians. His name is John Cobb. He's a philosopher, and he invited me to his Whiteheadian conference. Whitehead was a British philosopher, Russell's good friend, and we actually recorded the whole book, which will be published. When I challenged him, I said, "What is it really in Christianity that caused so much suffering to the world?" Because there were horrible massacres on all continents. He said, "Well, actually, Christianity managed to brainwash people tremendously, and don't really think that atheism that you see now in France or in Germany or in UK, that it is actually really atheist. It is all based on Christian fundamentalist dogma. We actually address these issues, and I think it is partially religion itself and partially the people. Now, but to come back to the how is it possible that the continent, which claims to be so secular, like Europe, can be actually fundamentalist? Well, Kopp and I came to the conclusion that the reason is that even 200 years ago, during the French Revolution or during the Renaissance, the vehicles, intellectual vehicles used to attack Christianity were Christian themselves. So in fact, it has already, even when religion itself shed its dogmas, directly, indirectly, the way how people analyze the world and how they see the arrangement of the planet, and also its such a privileged and important position, is actually still Christian. So Christianity, like Islam, it's not necessarily religion. Christianity can be both religion and culture. You know, so we are talking about both Christianity as a religion and Christianity as a culture. Now about Islam, it gets even more complicated, because what I'm arguing lately is that, in fact, Islam is socialist religion. Historically, you know, the first universities, the first public universities were in Morocco, the first public hospitals were in the Muslim world, the first
Iraq,
city planning was, here, and, science, medicine, all this came from here. So after the Second World War, here we have the situation when three biggest Muslim countries, Egypt, Iran, and Indonesia, were all socialist and secular. And we know perfectly well what would happen if the West would not interfere. We would have a very nice arrangement in the Muslim countries. We would have a good social system. Countries would be socially oriented, and they would be secular. So the West.
But you know, after the win of the Islamic Revolution in Iran in 1979, despite of this tint of Islam, but yet it's still a socialist country.
It is a socialist country, but what happened then? It was very also interesting that the West overthrew Mossadegh, who was a secular leader in 1953. We know what it did to Egypt, and it overthrew Sukarno in 1965 in Indonesia.
Yes.
2 to 3 million people died. And they used actually now, as an Indonesianist, I work a lot with this. The West brought Protestant priests from Netherlands, and they radicalized Muslim cadres and Hindu cadres in Bali and elsewhere, and they joined the killing of the intellectuals and left-wingers all over the archipelago. So 2 to 3 million people died. So what did they create? They overthrew three biggest left-wing Muslim secular countries, and they began implanting absolute horrors. I mean, they put General Suharto, the military strongman, to Indonesia. They began supporting Shah. And all that. So of course, again, in Iran, they pressed the country to the point that there had to be some backlash. So there was a religious backlash, and then the religious backlash also calmed down. So now, yes, as you correctly say, it's a socialist country. But the West is not really fighting the extremist Islam. It is creating extremist Islam, as we saw with Mujahideen also in Afghanistan, where they lulled the Soviet Union into the conflict, knowing perfectly what they were doing, and they exhausted the country by using organization which lately mutated to Al-Qaeda, which they claim that is their number one, enemy, or it was during that grotesque
and the offshoots
war of terror.
Al-Qaeda nowadays, like a Nusra Front.
A Nusra Front, of course.
Sure. Now, the Western propaganda apparatus is enormously effective and efficient. How can we, confront it? What are we supposed to do to counter such propaganda, Andrei?
Well, first of all, we have to have our own media, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm so happy talking to you.
Thank you.
Because
Our pleasure.
Television stations like yours, but also Telesur, for which I made and produced 5 documentary films, like Press TV, like RT, for which I write, even CCTV, which is still very timid, but we hope it's
Chinese,
gonna, the Chinese, we hope they will become more assertive soon. This big media is actually, and big new media is extremely important, because we cannot really rely, we should not be, the truth should not be just the opposition. The truth should become mainstream. In order for truth to become mainstream, we need big media. Sometimes we need state-sponsored media, like RT, for example, like Telesur, like Press TV, CCTV. We need more and more of this, because actually we see several of the outlets in Latin America right now, because actually we cannot fight anymore some kind of a dissident battle against the huge conglomerates, like all the press. You go to China, grotesquely, even some Chinese newspapers in English, like Global Times or China Daily, are using Reuters or AP for the international coverage. Now, how on earth can you really win the information war? I was recently back in Latin America, which is my second home. You would not believe it. Even in the countries where we won, Brazil, Ecuador, you go to the hotel and you don't find RT, you don't even find Telesur in some places like Brazil. You have O Globo, and then you have all kind of shades of Fox Sport, Fox this and that, Fox Internet, all this in Brazil, and O Globo itself is a right-wing television channel, and we have to fight through. We have to organize. We have to bombard our viewers and our readers with the. I don't even want to call it alternative information, with real information. And we really need big media. Once again, I cannot repeat it.
So media is the only thing that...
Media is very important. We also have to convince people that it's all about the values also. Because, for example, in Indonesia, another day at the University of Indonesia, and I'm sure it's here the same in
Lebanon.
In Lebanon, the students asked me, how can we fight corruption? I told them, well, first of all, jokingly, but not so jokingly, make sure that your professors don't go and study in the West, because they will teach them. I said, but also...
They would indoctrinate
them. But I also said, look, it's about the values. As long as this red Ferrari is the way how the young boy would find the easiest way to impress the girl, so she would go out with him for dinner and date him. Then you cannot stop the corruption, because nobody can, unless you are a very famous artist or whatever, you cannot buy Ferrari, especially at the age of like 21. But if, like in Cuba, to impress your girl is to go and write the most beautiful poem, and that would be more important than the red Ferrari.
And that will stay forever.
That stays forever, A, B. And B, you don't need money for it. You don't need to steal.
And it comes from the heart.
It comes from the heart.
mind.
It's beautiful. It's productive. You do something for her. You do something for yourself. You do something for your country.
Right. Allow me, Andre, to stop now for a short break, and then afterwards we need to focus on your criticism of John Perkins, the writer of Confession of an Economic Hitman. After the break. إذا فاصل قصير ونعود، لا تذهبوا بعيدا.
من أبرز كتب الفيلسوف الروسي الأمريكي أندري فالتشيك الأكاديمية الأول عن أندونيسيا بعنوان أندونيسيا أرخبيل الخوف، والثاني وهو فريد من نوعه لأنه يعالج مساحة كبيرة من العالم من بولينيزيا إلى ميلانيزيا ومايكرونيزيا بعنوان أوقيانوسيا، أي مجموعة جزر المحيط الهادئ والاستعمار الجديد والقنابل النووية والعظام، إلا أنه يشعر بالأسى حيال الكتابين. وكذلك وجه نقدا لكتاب جون بيركنز اعترافات قاتل اقتصادي مأجور. فعلى ماذا الانتقاد لبيركنز والشعور بالأسى؟
John Perkins wrote extremely important book. The Confession of Economic Hitman is actually a very important book. My problem is that with this, I met John Perkins at the old INN studio in New York, because they were interviewing him about the Hitman, and they were interviewing me about my film about Indonesian coup in 1965. I talked to John. He suffered from stroke. He was paralyzed at the time. And I think what I understood from him is that he was afraid that he's going to die, and he was afraid that he's going to take this terrible secret to the grave. Now, I understand, but I really don't think that this is the great or the most noble reason for exposing such a terrible crimes,
Secrets,
secrets. Basically, what this book says in one single simple paragraph is that John was trained by State Department to go to the countries like Ecuador and Indonesia and use money, sex, and alcohol to put countries into debt. Because if countries are deep in debt, they cannot really resist the Western colonialism
and the diktats. Yes.
Exactly, and that's what they did. They would get a government official drunk, get them women, pay them money, corrupt them totally, and then they would take totally ludicrous, ridiculous loans which country didn't need. Now he did all this. Okay. Now, of course, he wrote the book, and it's important that he did, but. He was still, after that, living high life, as he said himself, I think, in some of the interviews. So I don't go as far as my friend Leela Rajiva. My friend Leela Rajiva, who wrote the Abu Ghraib book, she refused to even interview him. She said, look, I mean, to me he's a criminal and I don't want to. I would not go so far. I mean, it's very honorable that he wrote the book. It's very good that he wrote the book, and so on. But I still have my own doubts about the reasons, and maybe he could have gone even further. Now, saying all that, book is very important and should be read by everybody. My further, not criticism, but actually outrage about this is that after what Perkins exposed in his book, any normal dictatorship would fall. Like, let's remember, one of the propaganda of the West is like about communism.
Yes, why did
Budapest, Hungary, 1956, 1957. You know, it was based on what? That somebody was hiding microphone in the parliament, and people heard that actually the Hungarian MPs were poking jokes at the people and didn't take them seriously. Here, we have actually one of the apparatchiks, one of the people employed by the empire, telling all the details about how the empire is destroying the world, and nobody goes to the streets, nobody demands
no revolution takes place.
No revolution, no a call to dismantle the system, the dictatorship, the global dictatorship, which this actually is.
Whoever have read this book.
Yes.
What about your 2 volumes?
2 academic books that I wrote, one on Indonesia, Archipelago of Fear, and one on neo-colonialism, dividing Oceania, actually convinced me. The reaction of the public convinced me that I should write something like exposing lies of the empire, and I should go back to the theater, I should go back to filmmaking, and I should go back to fiction. Why? Because people cannot anymore identify themselves with academia. Here I am spending years compiling all information with footnotes, with all the proofs what the West did to Indonesia. But at the end, it's only academics who read it. I'm invited to Cambridge, to Oxford, I'm invited to all these big universities to talk about it, about my films, about all this, but also about my books. Oceania, they teach classes now somewhere in University of Hawaii about it. But the result is it never influenced the people. It's dry, it's boring. It's boring for them because they need, and believe me, it's not really dry academic work. Neither I still, I try to make it more exciting and all this. But people, you see, people are not anymore impressed or moved by numbers.
You know, Andre, I have a lot of issues I wanted to ask you about, but you know, time just runs short. But I need you to answer one last question, if I may. Just 2 days before the end of 2014, you have written that 2015 will see decisive battles. The empire is crumbling. That is why it needs war. Well, actually, we have witnessed during this year horrific wars across the globe. It never stopped. Now, at the end of this year, what is your prognosis?
My prognosis are actually more optimistic now, and the reason is that Russia, we are in Lebanon, of course, we are next to Syria, and Syria is one of the countries which, being imperfect, as all countries are imperfect, it's still a great country which showed us determination to survive and to fight for its own identity, dignity, and for its own path. Now, Russia summoned the guts and heart and sent the Air Force to defend the old ally. And as they said, as many Russians said, that Syria actually also, when Russia was humiliated and on its knees during the Yeltsin regime, which was pro-Western Yeltsin regime, Syria never abandoned us. Syria was always our friend and our ally. And many people told me this time, we are not going to do what we did with Yugoslavia, to just abandon the country that was which is our sister, which is our ally. Now, China, of course, is also directly and indirectly supporting this. And we are having suddenly, you know, Latin America, which was so bombarded, Ecuador, Argentina, Brazil, Venezuela. We thought, I was there, you know, writing day and night. We were so afraid that, you know, the pro-Western media and these elites, they would overthrow the government in Ecuador. They didn't. So we survived there too. So suddenly it feels good. It doesn't feel perfect. The West would shy. But you see, it's not going to be easy for the West to overthrow, to destroy Iran, to destroy Syria, to destroy Russia, to destroy China, to destroy Latin America, South Africa. They will try, but it's totally different scenario now, because suddenly people not only speak, but people act.
Well, thank you for this optimistic message at the end of this edition. Russian-American philosopher Andrei Velchik, many thanks indeed for joining us again on The Inside.
Thank you so much and hope to see you again.
Hopefully, thank you sir. إذا لقاء جديد في الأسبوع المقبل مع ضيف جديد وقضية جديدة ودائما من الداخل. للمزيد من التواصل بريدنا The Inside @الميادين.net وصفحتنا على الفيسبوك من الداخل. من كل فريق عمل من الداخل من كل الميادين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.